next section, we'll be discussing physical and cognitive development in later life. So let's begin with this question. What are older adults like? Hopefully you guys have reflected on how you personally feel about aging. Is there anything you're excited about or scared about in particular? One of the most common fears, I think, of aging are those declines related to physical and mental health. So that can be really scary. Another thing to think about, though, is how does society portray aging? In general, do you think we, as a society, are accepting or rejecting of aging? So even if you just think about the types of commercials maybe that you see on TV, how do those commercials portray older adults? Well, a lot of times those commercials are very much anti-aging, right? I mean, there's literally anti-aging skin creams out there. So I think as a society, we do fight against this idea of getting older. We as a society, especially in the US, we are an individualistic culture. So as a society, we value independence. And so when older adults are getting older, when you're aging, when you're starting to need to rely more on other people, that can be a huge struggle, especially emotionally, because you're losing that independence. So I think it's important to keep this in mind that everyone is going to get older. Everyone is going to experience that loss of independence. And what we can do now is think about, well, how can we support older adults during this stage? So let's start by discussing primary and secondary aging. So many experts distinguish between conditions that are a product of aging and those that are strongly related to age but are not entirely caused by aging. So primary aging here refers to genetically influenced declines that affect all members of our species. And they're going to take place even in the context of overall good health. So it's those declines that happen just because you're getting older, like hair becoming gray, for example. Secondary aging refers to declines that are due to hereditary defects or negative environmental influences. So these would be things like poor diet, lack of exercise, or disease that are contributing to things that we might associate with aging. So here you see that the effects are very individualized, but a major contributor is frailty. So secondary aging definitely contributes to frailty. Frailty refers to just this overall weakened functioning of diverse organs and body systems. And so these yield symptoms that really interfere with everyday competence. So frailty can leave older people really vulnerable in the face of infection or extreme hot or cold weather or injury. So yes, primary aging does contribute to frailty, but researchers are going to say that secondary aging plays a much larger role. So let's move on and talk about longevity. So the number of years that a person can expect to live is the definition of longevity. Maximum life expectancy refers to the species-specific biological limit to the length of life in years. And this corresponds to the age at which the oldest known individual has died. So the oldest verified human age is 122 years. I think it was a lady in France. Now, researchers disagree on whether this figure represents the upper bound of human longevity or not, but what we consider to be maximum life expectancy is just the oldest that someone has lived. Average life expectancy is the age by which half of the population cohort born in the year of that statistic is expected to have died. So, for example, the life expectancy at birth of a child born in the United States is in 1997 was approximately 76 years. And this means that half of the children born in 1997 can expect to live to their 76th birthday or longer, and half will have died. So that's average life expectancy. There are many different factors that affect longevity. When you guys take that quiz, or if you've already taken that quiz that predicts how many years you will live, it's very helpful in identifying some of those factors. So think back to that quiz. What types of questions did they ask in that quiz? Well, one of the things that they need to know is gender. On average, women live about 5 years longer than men. We also know that there are societal level factors that impact longevity. So the impact of social class on longevity results from really reduced access to goods and services, especially medical care. People with higher social classes, they have improved safety, nutrition, hygiene, improved detection and treatment of medical issues, and this has resulted in longer life expectancies. Environmental factors also play a role here. They can influence longevity by influencing how much you're affected to different diseases or toxins or pollutants. So what we see, though, is that for the most part, people are actually responsible for most environmental factors. So like heavy cigarette smoking, we know lowers life expectancy by about 12 years on average. Obesity lowers life expectancy by about 1.5 years for every 10% that you are overweight. Air pollution, dangerous food additives, overuse of pesticides and weed killers, these all decrease longevity as well. And then other social factors like being married, for example, this increases the lifespan on average by about 5 years. Personality plays a role. So, how reactive are you to stressors? That was a question in the quiz. Do you have a moderate and flexible attitude in your life? It's not necessarily that you're living a stress-free life, but you're able to adapt to that stress. And then genetic factors also can influence longevity. So having a family history of certain diseases will influence longevity as well. So there's also this distinction that researchers make between the third age and the fourth age. The third age really refers to this new view that old age is a time of potential growth rather than decline. So this is really the good news about aging. When you're in the third age, from about 60 to 80, you'd be considered like the young old. And so the idea here is you're still able to kind of do things that might increase your life expectancy. You still have potential to be physically fit and mentally fit. There's high levels of emotional and personal well-being here. One thing that we know is that older adults actually react to stressors much better than younger adults. So in terms of subjective well-being, older adults do better than younger adults. So even though as a society we view old age and aging in more of this negative light, there are really positive things that we can look forward to, such as dealing with stress better. So then we get to the fourth age, and that's when you're over 80, and this is called the oldest old. And this really refers to those who are pretty much at their limits of functional capacity. So this is more the bad news of aging. So here we see that there are pretty big losses in cognitive potential and ability to learn. There's increases in the negative effects of chronic stress here. There's a high prevalence of dementia, frailty, and multiple chronic conditions. And then also this is when there's start to be problems with quality of life and dying with dignity. So we've got to make this distinction between the young old and the oldest old. The young old is more the good news about aging. The oldest old is more the bad news.